Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the narrow throat of water between two continents. Not a poetic meeting of worlds, but a real physical corridor where winds, currents, and politics all collide. You can taste salt on your lips. You can feel the damp cold that rises off the sea at dawn, even in summer. Now, picture ships, low and practical, built for crossing, not comfort, sliding through the Strait of Gibraltar with oars creaking and rigging whispering. On one side, North Africa behind you, on the other, an unknown peninsula ahead, dark and heavy like a sleeping animal. This is not a legend told from a safe distance. This is you standing close enough to smell pitch on timber and sweat on wool. You are there when a commander makes a decision meant to slam shut the door behind an army. You are there when rumors harden into resolve, when fear becomes a weapon, and when geography itself, mountains, rivers, marshes, open plains, decides who lives and who vanishes into history. If you stay with me through these 4 chapters, I'll walk you through what you would have seen and heard. The coastline, the rock that will take a man's name, the camps and supply lines, the politics of a crumbling Visigoth kingdom, and the pressure of a battle that will change Iberia for centuries. Before we step onto that shore, if you're not subscribed to this channel, subscribe now, and don't forget to like this video. It's the simplest way to tell the algorithm and me that you want more stories like this. We need you for the next one. Chapter 1, the Strait, the Landing, and the Rock. You would first notice how alive the strait is. Maps make it look like a clean line between Africa and Europe, but in reality, it's a working, restless body of water. The Atlantic pushes in from the west, the Mediterranean pushes back, and the winds, especially the Levante and the Poniente, change the sea's mood in minutes. Even before you see the Iberians coast clearly, you feel the current tugging the hull sideways. You hear the boatmen calling corrections. You learn quickly that crossing is not a single act. It's a negotiation with water. Behind you is the North African shore, places like Tangier and Ceuta, outposts connected to the Umayyad world by roads, garrisons, and the chain of command. The governor in Ifriqiya, Musa ibn Nusayr, is the senior authority in the region. The force you're with is led by Tariq ibn Ziyad, a commander often described as Berber, operating in an army that is a blend. Berber fighters, Arab officers, clients, and the practical specialists who make armies move. Scouts, smiths, horse handlers, cooks, and men who know how to keep ropes from snapping at the worst possible time. If you were there, you'd understand something immediately. This expedition is not a casual raid. Raids are fast, shallow, and designed to return home. This crossing has the weight of a foothold. You can hear it in the way the officers speak, less about loot, more about ground, more about holding. As the Iberian shore grows closer, it doesn't greet you with open beaches. The coastline is jagged in places, steep in others, and then rising like a dark tooth from the land, you see it. The massive limestone height that will be called Jabal Tariq, Tariq's mountain. What the modern world will know as Gibraltar. From sea level, it feels unnatural, like something placed there to watch you. Clouds cling to its upper slopes, and seabirds circle it as if it has its own weather. Landing is never clean. The first boats scrape stone. Men jump down with loads held high to keep powder, cloth, and rations dry. Horses, if you have them, are the hardest problem. You can't explain the tension of moving a horse from rocking timber onto unfamiliar ground until you've seen it. The animal's eyes wide, the handlers murmuring, the risk that one wrong kick shatters a man's knee or sends supplies into the surf. You would also notice the smell of the shore, not romantic sea air, but brine mixed with algae, wet sand, animal dung, smoke from driftwood fires, and the sharp bite of pitch used to seal seams. You'd see men pulling boats up beyond the tide line and flipping them for repairs. You'd see guards posted immediately, not because an enemy is charging, but because an army without eyes is an army already defeated. Now about the ships. The story you've probably heard, the one that survives because it's so dramatic, is that Tariq ibn Ziyad ordered the ships burned so there would be no retreat. Historically, some scholars treat the ship burning as a tradition that may have been embellished over time because logistics in an amphibious campaign are complicated and ships are valuable. But whether the order was literally burn them or functionally we are not going back, the psychological effect is the same. And if you were there, you would remember the moment not as a clean hero scene, but as a messy, decisive act. You'd watch men stack kindling against hulls still damp from the crossing. You'd see the hesitation in a few faces, because every sailor understands how insane it is to destroy your lifeline. Then a torch touches pitch, and the flame does what flame always does. It takes the easiest path first, then it accelerates. The smoke is thick and oily, blackening the air. The sound is not a single roar. It's a series of crackles, groans, and pops, like the ships are arguing with the decision. You'd feel it in your stomach, because in that instant, the geography closes behind you. Africa becomes not home, but water. Retreat becomes not a plan, but a gamble. The only direction with certainty is forward, into a land you don't control. That night, camp life would look disciplined but strained. You'd see small fires, not large ones. Fire is comfort, but it's also a beacon. Scouts move like ghosts at the camp's edge. Men check straps, sharpen blades, rewrap feet. Someone is always repairing something. A torn sandal, a cracked shield rim, a harness strap. You'd hear quiet arguments about distance and numbers because nobody fully agrees on what awaits inland. And then the first real work begins. Reconnaissance. You would be sent, or you would watch others sent, up the lower slopes of the rock and into the surrounding ridges. From higher ground, the world opens. To the west, the Atlantic breathes. To the east, the Mediterranean lies flatter, older, like a different sea entirely. Inland, the terrain changes fast. Scrub, patches of woodland, shallow valleys, and routes that armies have used for centuries because the land forces you into them. This is also where the political reality starts to seep into your ears. You'd hear that the Visigothic kingdom in Iberia is not stable. There are factions, nobles with competing claims, resentments, and grudges. A kingdom can have walls and still be hollow. And hollow kingdoms collapse quickly when struck in the right place. The first chapter ends not with a battle, but with a mood. The feeling that a door has closed and the only way to survive is to become a spear, moving forward. Chapter 2. Into Al-Andalus. Roads, rumors, and first blood. When you move inland, you stop being a visitor and become an intrusion. The land does not welcome you, it tests you. You would march along paths that are sometimes Roman in origin, old roads with stones worn smooth by centuries of feet, hooves, and carts. In other places, you follow tracks that are nothing but hardened dirt, threading between bushes and low trees. The sun can be merciless in open areas, but mornings can feel surprisingly cold near the coast, especially when wind comes off the water. You'd notice how quickly an army becomes a creature with needs. Water first. An army without water becomes frantic in a day. Food next. Grain is life because it travels. Livestock is life because it walks. You'd see officers calculating how far you can move without breaking the line of supply, even if that line is nothing more than captured stores and disciplined rationing. You'd see foragers sent out with strict orders. Don't scatter too far. Don't start fights you can't finish. Don't burn what you might need later. The first settlements you encounter are not grand capitals. They're villages, farmsteads, and small fortified points. Iberia in this period is a landscape of worked fields, orchards, grazing land, and scattered stone structures. The people you see, when you see them, watch from doorways and tree lines. Some run, some hide, some offer information, either out of fear or because they're tied to local rivalries. This is where you would feel the truth behind conquests. They are not only won by swords, but by knowledge. A guide who knows where the river can be crossed is worth 12 fighters. A rumor about a rival noble can open a gate faster than a battering ram. You'd also begin to learn the enemy's shape. The Visigoth forces, when they appear, carry a different military culture. They have heavy infantry, noble cavalry, and a sense of hierarchy that can be both a strength and a weakness. Their equipment is varied: spears, swords, shields, and armor that ranges from simple to impressive. Their cavalry can be dangerous in open terrain. But they, too, are dealing with internal fractures. Some lords will hesitate. Some will calculate. Some will betray. If you were there, you'd see small clashes before you see the battle. Skirmishes that history doesn't name. A scouting party collides with a patrol near a stream. A supply group is ambushed at a bend in the road. An outpost holds for an hour and then collapses. In these moments, you learn the land's language. Reeds by a river can hide men. Low hills can mask movement. A marsh can swallow horses. And you'd see how Tariq's force tries to compensate for being far from home. Speed, surprise, and pressure. Not reckless speed, but purposeful movement. Hit points of weakness, avoid getting pinned, and keep momentum so the defender never feels stable enough to gather the whole kingdom at once. At night, the camp changes. You hear languages mixing, Arabic commands, Berber speech, local tongues picked up through translators. You see men praying, men sleeping, men staring silently at fire embers as if looking for futures inside them. You smell cooked grain and smoke and unwashed bodies. You hear the occasional laugh that feels too loud, because laughter is a way to prove you're still human. You would also hear the name that matters, Roderick, the Visigoth king. Reports come like drops of rain before a storm. He is gathering a force. He is moving south. Nobles are with him, some loyal, some resentful, some waiting to see which way the wind turns. The weight of the coming confrontation grows heavier each day. Every mile inland feels like you're tightening a rope around your own waist. Geography starts to funnel you. Rivers and valleys dictate routes. The land between southern coastal areas and the interior is not a smooth carpet. It's a system of corridors. If you were there, you'd understand why battles so often happen near rivers. Water draws humans, and rivers create choke points that commanders can exploit. By the time you reach the region where the decisive engagement will occur, often associated with the Battle of Guadalete, though the exact location is debated in sources, You can feel that both sides are being pulled toward inevitability. Some accounts place it near rivers and wetlands in the south, where ground can be treacherous. Whether the battlefield is nearer to the Guadalete River, the Barbate, or another waterway, the key detail is consistent. This is not a perfect open plain for cavalry glory. It is a mixed landscape with soft ground, reeds, heat, and places where formations can break. You would see commanders walking the terrain with narrowed eyes, testing the soil with a heel, watching how water sits in low places, noting where a hill offers a view, where a river bend can trap a retreat. Officers talk in short, practical phrases. If they charge here, we fold back. If they hold there, we pressure the flank. Nobody is poetic. Poetry comes later when the survivors need to explain what happened. And then, on an evening before the major clash, the air becomes thick with something you can't name until you've lived it. Anticipation mixed with dread. The kind of dread that doesn't scream. It whispers. You would lie down, if you can sleep at all, and realize the truth. Tomorrow, the land itself will decide which story gets told. Chapter 3. The Great Clash, when a kingdom breaks. If you were there on the morning the main battle began, you would remember the sounds before the sights. First, distant movement, like wind through dry grass, but heavier. Then the layered noise of an army forming, men calling positions, metal tapping metal, horses snorting and stamping, the occasional shout that carries farther than it should. Somewhere, a horn. Somewhere else, the roll of drums. You would taste dust. Not because you're marching yet, but because thousands of feet and hooves turn the ground into a haze. The field, wherever exactly it was, would not look like a clean rectangle. It would look like a living mess of constraints. Wetter ground near water, firmer ground on slight rises, patches of vegetation that block sight lines, and heat that begins to press down as the day advances. You would see Roderick's force first as a mass, then as structure, a center with authority, likely marked by banners and better-equipped men. Cavalry positioned where they can move, infantry blocks that rely on discipline and weight, nobles and their retinues, men who fight not only for the kingdom, but for their own status. And then you would look at your own side and understand the gamble. You are outnumbered, or at least you feel outnumbered. Even if you can't count precisely, you can sense scale. The enemy line looks thicker. Their camp, their supply train, their confidence, it all suggests a kingdom defending itself. This is where leadership becomes more than strategy. It becomes psychology. Tradition preserves a speech attributed to Tariq ibn Ziyad, words about the sea behind and the enemy ahead, about endurance, about there being no escape except through victory. Whether every sentence is preserved accurately is less important than the reality you would feel. Commanders must turn fear into direction. An army that believes it must win is more dangerous than an army that hopes to win. When the first engagements begin, they are not cinematic. They are confused. Scouts collide. Skirmishers test each other. Lines advance in hesitant pulses like a creature probing pain. You would see archers or slingers, depending on availability. Loose volleys meant less to kill and more to disrupt. You would watch men raise shields reflexively. You'd hear the thud of projectiles striking wood and the sharper ring when metal is hit. Then the real contact happens. Infantry meets infantry with a sound that is hard to describe, a grinding impact of bodies, shields, and weapons. It is not one moment. It is continuous pressure, Men shove, step, stab, pull back, replace the fallen, and shove again. You would realize quickly that stamina is a weapon. The man who can keep his arms up after an hour is dangerous. The man who cannot becomes a gap. Cavalry, if it charges, changes the atmosphere instantly. Horses are not just animals in battle. They are moving walls with fear inside them. The ground matters. In firm terrain, a charge can break a line. In soft or wet ground, horses hesitate, slip, or lose momentum, turning power into vulnerability. If the battlefield includes marshy patches or river-adjacent softness, you would see cavalry forced into narrower lanes, easier to predict, easier to harass. You would also witness something that no heroic retelling likes to emphasize: confusion caused by politics. The Visigoth kingdom's internal fractures, noble rivalries, contested legitimacy, and resentments are not abstract. They become tactical realities. Units arrive late, some hold back, some may withdraw when they should press. In some accounts of this campaign, parts of Roderick's coalition do not fully commit, whether from betrayal, caution, or calculation. And on a battlefield, hesitation is contagious. Hour by hour, the battle becomes a test of coherence. Which side can keep a line? Which side can replace losses without losing formation? Which side's commanders can communicate when dust blinds and noise drowns? If you were there, you might find yourself near a small rise, watching how small decisions ripple. A messenger reaches a commander, mine it, too late. A flank bends, then bends farther. A banner falls, and men think it means the leader is dead. Someone shouts an order. Half the unit hears it wrong. This is how battles are actually decided, not by a single heroic stroke, but by the accumulation of tiny failures. At some point, different accounts place it at different times, the Visigoth center begins to crack. Not necessarily in a dramatic collapse, but in a loss of shape. When a line loses shape, men stop being a unit and become individuals. Individuals can be brave, but individuals can also run. And once running starts, it spreads. You would see the retreat routes form instinctively, toward higher ground, away from wetlands, toward any path that seems safer. But terrain is cruel. A river that looked like a boundary now becomes a trap. A marsh that looked like just a wet patch becomes a place where men stumble and are overtaken. Horses press against each other in panic. Equipment becomes a burden. Shields are dropped. A noble's fine armor becomes an anchor if he falls. You might not see Roderick himself clearly. Kings in battle are surrounded by protection and chaos. But you would feel the moment when the idea of the king's invincibility breaks. Whether he dies on the field, disappears in the retreat, or is lost to history in the confusion, the effect is the same. The kingdom's central symbol vanishes. And when that symbol vanishes, you are not just winning a battle. You are watching a state lose its spine. As evening approaches, the battlefield becomes quieter in a way that feels unnatural, not peaceful, just drained. The dust settles slowly. Men search for comrades. Officers try to count who remains. The wounded are gathered where possible. Water becomes precious again. You would see faces streaked with grime, eyes red from smoke and exhaustion, hands trembling not from fear, but from depletion. And in that exhausted quiet, you would understand something chilling. The battle is not the end. It is the opening of a gate. Chapter 4. Aftermath and Open Roads. How Land Becomes History. The days after the decisive clash would feel like walking through a door into a house. where the Hoseion is gone and nobody agrees who owns the keys. If you were there, you would notice the change immediately. Not in the landscape, rivers still run, hills still rise, but in human behavior. Messengers arrive with less confidence. Local officials hesitate. Fortified points negotiate instead of resist. The kingdom's ability to coordinate defense has been shattered. An army can lose a battle and still recover, but a kingdom that loses its leadership and unity at the same moment becomes vulnerable everywhere at once. You would march through southern Iberia with a new kind of momentum. Not the careful, tense momentum of an expedition unsure of its footing, but the forward pull of a force that now senses a vacuum. Geography continues to shape everything. You'd follow valleys that function like natural roads. You'd cross rivers at known fords because bridges are few and often defended. You'd move toward nodes, towns that control routes, cities that hold stores, places where administration lives. Conquest is not a straight line on a map. It is a sequence of grabbing the points that make movement possible. You would also see negotiation as a weapon. Some communities, especially those tired of Visigoth noble disputes or seeking better terms, might choose submission over destruction. In historical conquests, this often takes the form of agreements, payment, guarantees, and administrative arrangements. The details vary by place and source, but the pattern is common. When a central authority collapses, local survival strategies take over, and you would see the start of a new name for the land, Al-Andalus. Though what that name covers and how quickly it becomes standard evolves over time. What matters in your lived experience is this: the place stops being enemy territory and becomes territory under management. That shift changes everything. You begin thinking in terms of garrisons, supply storage, communication routes, and who speaks for whom. You would likely hear about Musa ibn Nusayr watching events closely. In many accounts, Musa later crosses with reinforcements and takes a direct role, because success invites supervision, and rapid advances require structure. Victories create political questions. Who gets credit? Who controls the new lands? And how expansion is reported upward in the Umayyad hierarchy. But the human texture remains the most memorable. You would walk through landscapes that feel almost impossibly rich compared to harsher stretches of North Africa. Green river valleys, cultivated fields, olive groves, and vineyards. You would see Roman remnants, stonework that outlasts the people who built it, standing alongside Visigoth structures. You'd pass churches, villas, and small fortifications. You'd see that Iberia is not a blank slate. It is layered. And you would feel personally the weight of being part of something that will echo. Not because you are thinking about the future in a poetic way, but because you can sense how quickly the world is reorganizing around you. At night, around fires, men would talk differently now. Less, will we survive? And more, how far can this go? You would hear names of cities spoken like prizes and problems: Cordoba, Toledo, and others deeper inland, centers not only of wealth, but of administration and legitimacy. Every step forward is a step into more complicated governance. If you were there, you'd also sense the quiet unease that comes after dramatic commitment. Burning the ships, literal or symbolic, has consequences. It binds you to the land. It forces you to build a new stability rather than ride home on a temporary wave of success. An army can win a battle quickly. Building an order takes order, patience, diplomacy, and hard choices. And this is where the documentary truth becomes clear. The moment of conquest is not a single heroic act. It is an interlocking system of geography, logistics, political fracture, and disciplined pressure. The strait made the crossing risky, but it also made retreat costly. The Rock of Gibraltar made a landmark, but it also made a statement. The rivers and wetlands shaped the battle, but they also shaped the collapse. The Visigoth kingdom's internal divisions did not merely weaken it, they actively altered the battlefield. And the aftermath was not just victory, it was the sudden need to administer a land that did not ask to be changed. So when you ask, what would I have seen if I stood there? The honest answer is this. You would have seen fire-eating ships, and you would have smelled the smoke of irreversible decisions. You would have seen men moving by dawn along old roads, because empire often travels on routes built by older empires. You would have seen a battle decided as much by ground and cohesion as by bravery, and you would have seen the eerie quiet after a kingdom breaks, when the roads feel open, not because the land is empty, but because the center can no longer command its edges. Closing, if you want me to continue with more documentary-style, first-person historical immersions like this, different battles, different eras, different turning points, subscribe to the channel and like this video. It genuinely helps this series survive and grow, and it tells me which stories you want next.